Hello, and welcome to the Behavior Education Connection, the podcast that works to connect the world of behavior analysis and the world of education. We focus on topics important to behavior analysts who work in the public schools and those who support them. Join us and spend time gaining insights and ideas as our host talks with fellow behavior analysts as well as other experts in the field. Hello again, and welcome to the newest episode of the Behavior Education Connection. I'm your host, Dr. Selena Layden, and I am excited today to be joined by Tyshira Eubanks. Hi, Tyshira. How are you?
I'm good.
Can you give us a brief introduction?
Sure. So I currently work as a behavior support specialist for Charlottesville City Schools. This was my first full year.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It just ended, so summer just started, which I'm excited about. I've not had a summer off since I was 15 years old, pretty much. So
Something to celebrate for sure.
Yeah, first summer off in 16 years. I'm excited. Before I was a BCBA there, I worked at a private day school for about 8 years. I was an RBT for 6 of those years and then a BCBA for 2 of those years. So I've been in the field for a while. Really enjoy it. Gonna stick with it.
Well, that's always good to hear. So I am excited for us to have our conversation today. So basically, we're going to be kind of talking about rapport building and its importance across stakeholders. And so I kind of want to jump into the conversation with, I think rapport building is one of those things that falls in that soft skills part of our repertoire. So why are those soft skills so important for BCBAs, especially those that work in schools?
I think those soft skills are very important with all stakeholders. I focus on with the staff that we work with a lot. We, at least in public schools, I know where I work, I don't spend a lot of time in classroom, like building relationships with those staff that are there every single day. Sometimes I'm the person that just shows up and like puts out the fire, or I'm the person that shows up with this long behavior plan. And I'm like, this is what we have to do. I'm going to check for fidelity. I'm going to be back once a week to do this and do that. And there's not a lot of time to get to know everyone unless you make that time, unless you make an effort. And I know that when I was in like my grad program, there was a lot of focus on some of those soft skills with parents, which are, it's also important. But even then, it didn't go into great detail about how to actually build those relationships versus just like make sure that you're saying things in a nice using layman's terms versus using our big behavior analytic words. And so I think those things get skipped over a lot when we focus on building our BCBA skills.
So what kinds of things what does that look like? So as you're trying to work with teachers and parents and whoever the stakeholder is, what does it look like to build that rapport and to use those soft skills?
Yeah, so I really started focusing on rapport myself. I had a boss one time, like a few years ago. She said something. She wasn't a BCBA, but she ran like the place where I worked, and she said something to the effect of, "We have to make these hard decisions, and it's okay if people don't like us." And I remember thinking, but I want people to like me. I want to be able to make the good decisions for my students and for my staff. And I still want them to respect me and understand where I'm coming from and not think, oh my God, I can't believe Tyshira did that. That's crazy. And so some of those skills that when I focused on in my presentation were just simple things like building conversation with someone. People make bids for conversation all the time, especially in like those close-knit classroom environments. I remember there was a staff in one class, she was talking to me about her wedding. And I had just gotten married not too recently. And so I was like talking to her about my wedding, we were talking about her wedding. And so the next time I showed up, and the student that I have in that classroom had been having a terrible week. And so she was already in like a terrible mood when I got there. And I immediately was like, well, how's the wedding planning going? And you could see her calm down just a little bit. She's like, okay, we can talk about my wedding and I can forget the fact that I've had the hardest week of my life this week. And some of like just using some of those soft skills to not only build relationships, but give people a break from the monotony of really hard behavior situations.
Yeah, and so you've started alluding to this, but what is what's the reason that we should do this? Like what's the reinforcer for you? What's the reinforcer for our stakeholders? Like why is this important?
Yeah, I think one thing I really focused on in my presentation was client outcomes. I think that if you really want that hard to like quantifiable data, because rapport is hard to quantify. There is no like if you smile at me 5 times and I know you like me sort of thing. It's hard to get it. There's no number for rapport. It's but one way you can really see if it's going in the way you want it to, if it's having an effect, is client outcomes. The the better the people that work with our students are feeling, especially towards us or towards the students they're working with, the better our students will do. And I think that is one of the reasons why rapport is so important.
Yeah, for sure. I know when I used to work in the schools and I would walk into classrooms, there's a big difference walking into a room where a teacher's like, "Oh, I'm so happy to see you," and a teacher who's like, "Why are you here?"
Yeah. Yeah. I just got back from ABAI 2 weekends ago, and I went to one presentation that was about BCBAs in public school. And someone said, what is the biggest misconceptions that BCBAs have going into public school? And the speaker said, it's that teachers want us there.
Oh,
And I was like, yeah, honestly. And it's not that they don't want us there, but it's like we come with, you need to graph this and you need to take this data. And sometimes we don't always see things from their side and they don't see things from our side. So there's a disconnect there. And getting to know them better and showing up and understanding where they're coming from, understanding that we're not in the classroom every day for the most part. There might be some BCBAs that are in some of the more self-contained classes every day. But we're not really there every day. They are. They are the true experts with our students. They will probably always know just a bit more about that student's day-to-day school life than we do. And we should respect that and take that into consideration.
yeah, one of the things that I used to say a lot, and I still say when I teach, is, when you work in a school, a lot of times you're not in a position of authority, right? You're not the one who hires and fires people. You're not the one who's doing evaluations. Some people are, but that's not the norm. And so, if that's the case, then how do you actually accomplish your work? And so, I used to always say it's really about building those relationships. You have to have those relationships for people to want to work with you, to want to implement the things that you're recommending that they implement. Because to your point, at the end of the day, you leave and they close the classroom door, and then they're going to do whatever they want to do.
Yeah, exactly. And them respecting you and having that understanding of this is the plan and this is where I'm coming from, the better relationship you have with the people that are working day to day in that classroom, the more likely they are to invest in your plans. That's how you get that buy-in, honestly, is like building that rapport and showing that your plans can work. And they're more likely to give them a try if they trust you.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that comes from walking the walk with them, right? I'm here to support you. I'm here to walk through this with you. It's not, here's the paper, and now I walked out the door, and I'll see you in a week and tell me how it's going.
Hmm. Yeah.
So if building rapport is a critical skill, what recommendations do you have for school-based BCBAs on how to do this?
Yeah. I read a really good article and it was really relevant to me because I worked in a grocery store when I was a teenager. And it was an article about how cashiers that work in retail build rapport with customers.
Oh, okay.
And of course their rapport is more in like a short term sort of thing because you only deal with that person for 5 to 10 minutes. But those skills I think could be transferred into most sort of any sort of like service directed industry where we're providing someone with a service.
For sure.
And so I'm trying to remember all of them like now from like off the top of my head, but they were just being polite was one of them, which is like a very common thing. I think most people come in like no one shows up hopefully in a bad mood or in a way that's like trying to be disrespectful on
Hopefully.
purpose. Hope fingers crossed. People have bad days, but I don't think everyone starts every day in a bad mood. I definitely have my bad days. But I think like showing up and being as polite as possible. And that's not just like saying like please and thank you. Obviously, we're going to use those nice quantifiers, but or those qualifiers. But it's showing up and like I said, having that respect and knowing that these are the people that work with those students every single day and deferring to them in certain situations. Um, Taking feedback is a huge skill that I think all BCBA should really get good at, and not even that asking for the feedback. I think it shows a level of vulnerability if you're able to say, "Hey, what when I came to you with this plan, what did I do that I should work on more? Like, what do you like about it? What were some of my strengths, my weaknesses?" And I think being able to put yourself out there in that way will encourage those staff to be able to take your feedback better, knowing that you're able to ask for it and receive it in a way that's positive.
Yeah, one of the things I agree with all of that. One of the things that I know a lot of times, of course, school-based BCBAs get called in when things are already not good, right? You don't get called in when the classroom is happy and everyone's doing everything they're supposed to be doing, which would be great. But when you get called in, things are already not in a good place a lot of times. And so I know, when I first would meet a teacher, the first thing I would do is just say, like, tell me about your classroom. Just a really open-ended question. And it's amazing how many times that led to a lot of big emotions right away. And when I first started, I honestly would get a little bit annoyed of like, can we just get past this so we can get to the problem solving part? And then I
Yeah.
realized like that actually is part of the problem solving part. Like they have to work through some of that too. And to your point, this is their classroom and they live this every day. And so when the student is tearing down the bulletin board that they spent hours working on, or, tears up all the worksheets that they spent all of their planning time copying, or whatever the case may be, like that does feel or can feel personal. And so, kind of working through that, I do think is a step that needs to happen sometimes.
Mhm. Yeah, it's definitely because I work with like a wide range of. I'm the only BCBA in our district currently, so I work with preschool to post high. But I go into like a preschool class and there's like 15 kids running around everywhere, and there's one kid I'm there to sort of observe and help, and I'm like, oh well, let's try giving this kid like Skittles everyone, and of course the teacher's like, no, we're not going to give out Skittles in class to the kid that just like destroyed the entire classroom. And I 100% like get where she's coming from. It's
Right.
not that she doesn't believe in reinforcement. It's just that there hasn't been any reinforcement on her end from this student, and there like the rapport in that relationship needs mending as well. And so coming in, I see her side, and I'm coming in and not being immediately sort of like accusatory or like even like
Mhm.
know it all. Like, well, I'm going to tell you, we're going to do reinforcement, and it's definitely going to work. But just knowing that like when I'm not there, there's a whole other side of things happening. And one thing I have noticed, which is slightly off topic, when I do show up, because I am like a new, fresh face, sometimes the student that I'm there to observe is perfect.
Oh, absolutely. And then
Yeah.
you get the whole like, can you come every day?
Yeah. And oh, I get that all the time. It's like, oh, can you come every day? Because when you're here, nothing happens. And so just knowing
Which of
that, like,
course doesn't last.
oh no, when I come for the second observation, then all of a sudden, like, I'm getting things thrown at me. So Um, but it's one of those things where it's like knowing that this classroom's ecosystem exists without me. I'm a guest. I'm a visitor. I'm not a part of their everyday. And just deferring, I think, is very important.
Yeah, you bring up a really good point that I used to think a lot about when I would go into classrooms is that every classroom has their own culture of how it works, right? And sometimes I would go into classrooms and teachers would stop their instruction. Oh, we're so happy to see you. You can sit here. You can do the, all the things. Class, this is, so and so, and they're here to see the class, whatever the case may be. Then there are other teachers who they don't even acknowledge me when I walk in. They just go on with their lesson and expect me to figure out where I'm going to sit, where I'm going to do, all of that. And there's nothing right or wrong with either approach. But I think to your point of taking that lead and going with kind of the culture that's set up in the classroom, so that I'm not inadvertently interrupting instruction because we don't want to do that, obviously. And then the other part of it is, those kids react to how their teacher is behaving, right? And so if however their teacher behaves is going to influence what goes on in the classroom. And so kind of taking the lead when we first enter an environment and not disrupting that flow, I think is really important and does show a lot of respect, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm all for not disrupting the flow. I walk in, I will sit in any chair I can find.
Yep.
I've sat in the tiniest chairs
With
possible.
your knees to your chin.
On this, my legs aren't even very long, but like in those chairs, I feel so tall.
Yep.
I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna squeeze into my little kindergarten chair in the back. And I notice it, especially in high school, I'll walk in and like no one says a word to me, that no one notices I'm even there, which I think is better for high school anyway, because I don't want them to have the stigma of like someone coming to observe them. But um yeah, it is best to kind of go with like the flow of the classroom and try to fit in as best as you can.
So, what advice would you give a school-based BCBA who is trying to work in a classroom and maybe it didn't start off great, or maybe it's not going as well as they want? Like, what advice could you give them?
I would give them the advice of sitting down with the teacher in a non-confrontational way. Like have a notepad out, take some, or have your computer out, take some notes, and give the teacher's perspective. What's going perfect in this classroom? What does he or she like about how the classroom is going? What would they like to change? What are their top focuses? And then give your side. Like this is what I've seen from being in the classroom for however much time. Compare and contrast, and then sort of elicit that feedback. Because if you have been in the class for a while, you can say, well, what have you seen from me that you would like to see different? Like, do you want me involved more? Do you want me in there like one-on-one with students? Do you want me to take a step back? Do you want me to help you with tier one and tier two? Or do you want me like tier three, this student, these programs? Get the teacher involved as much as possible. Don't just, go back to your office and type up a 40-page BSP BIP and then come back and say, well, this is what we need to do. This will fix the class. I think working as collaboratively as possible with the teacher, SLP, whoever is involved with these cases would be the first step.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I would just add to that, I think we have to remember that adults are still people
Oh,
and our science works, right? Our science works across people. And so, what can we do to reinforce those teachers? How can we provide positive feedback, even if things are not going well? And I would dare say that most teachers know when things aren't going well,
oh
right?
yeah.
Like it's
Mhm.
not a surprise, but it also when things aren't going well in your job and you know that, and then someone's coming in to also tell you things aren't going well,
So stressful.
it is. It's really stressful, even if you have the best of intentions and you want it to get better. And I know I have definitely said to teachers many times, I'm not here to judge you. I'm really here to support you. And so,
Yeah.
how can we make that happen? And I think sometimes just acknowledging that,
Mhm.
because especially I was a central office person,
Mhm.
and when I started, there was definitely a feeling of like, oh, central office is here, we must be in trouble, right? Like,
Mhm.
oh, central office is here, everybody like be on your best behavior,
Yeah.
and I worked really hard to break that down while I was in those positions to be like, no, I'm here just to see you and support you, and you're not in trouble. And I purposely would stop by when they weren't in trouble, like when
Yeah.
things were good, to just say, hey, I just wanted to check in and see how things are going. Which I think does build that rapport so that when I walk in the room the first time, it's not a shock of, oh my gosh, Dr. Layden's here. Like, what are we going to do now? I don't want that to be the case. I want it to be like, oh, great, Dr. Layden's here. We're going to have a good conversation, or she's here to help, or, whatever the case may be. Or she's just here to see the kids, which I would do too.
Yeah, I always when I come in, I always say like, "Hey, do whatever you normally do. I'm not here to judge you. I'm here to see sort of the worst. I'm like, I want to see all the behavior that can possibly take place. That's what I'm here to see. Do what you normally do. I'm not going to write up a whole page about this teacher did this, but I really just want to see what
Mhm.
happens on a regular basis, and then we can meet up and talk about it all after that."
On the flip side, I'm sure you've had this too. I have teachers that are like, do you want me to set the behavior off? I'm like, no,
Oh yeah,
no, I
100%.
don't actually want you to do that on purpose.
Yeah, like okay, yeah, I can start it. I'm like, well, don't start it.
If you already know that, then we can move to the next
Yeah,
step.
I'm like, if you already know that, then let's get our FBA going. We know what the triggers are.
Exactly.
Let's get it started.
Exactly. Well, this has been a really great conversation, but is there anything else that you want to share?
Um, I had a thought and then I lost it, which is very common. Um, oh yeah, one thing I was going to share, just like a fun like little tidbit that I always do, whenever I'm starting like an IEP meeting or like behavior plan meeting, I always start, especially when parents are there, because parents don't know me very well. I don't have a
Right.
lot of direct contact with parents, and they hear like behavior specialist is in this meeting. They are ready for me to say, well, this is what your kid is doing wrong. I always start the meeting with the most positive thing I know about this student, which I think is like a no-brainer. But in case anyone wanted that tip, I always start by saying like, especially if it's like one of the younger kids, I'm like, your kid is super cute. If I could spend all day with them, I would, which is the truth. I love
Right.
the younger kids. And I think even with the when I'm meeting with teachers, I always start off by saying something positive about the classroom. Like I love your decorations. I love the energy of the class. I love how much focus and attention you give to each individual student. And I'm not saying like don't compliment sandwich them or anything, but I think starting off with something positive is always the way to go.
Well, I think it's a really good way to just kind of start the rapport building, right?
Mhm.
And I think it's a really important point because I'm totally overgeneralizing, but I think a lot of BCBAs tend to be very like, let's get to the business, let's get
Yeah.
to the point.
Very analytical, yeah.
Exactly, exactly.
Mhm.
Like I think we tend to be drawn to this field, right?
Yeah.
And so sometimes I don't think it's intentional, but I do think sometimes we forget there's a person there with feelings. And, we all like to hear compliments, even if it's like, I really love your hair today, or
Yeah.
I really love the colors you picked for your class. You're right. Those little comments can make a really big difference and go a long way.
Mhm.
And then I do want to just wrap around one more point that you brought up is
Mhm.
remembering things about the folks you're working with. So,
Yeah.
when you were like, how's the wedding planning going? It was a nice conversation starter for that, but it was also like, oh, you remembered. Like you remembered
Yeah,
something about me.
yeah, you're paying attention to the things I'm telling you. Because
Exactly.
I always make it a point. I'm saying people aren't telling you things about themselves just to, like fill the air. They're telling you things that are important. People bring up things that like they want you to know about them. And it's important it makes them feel good when you bring those things back up.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Mhm.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Tayshira. This has been a really good conversation. I really appreciate your time today.
Yeah, thank you.
And to our listeners, as always, thank you. We're glad to have you, and we hope to see you on the next episode.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Behavior Education Connection. Join us next time for another great conversation about behavior analysis in the schools. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on an episode. Sending out a special thanks to the Virginia Department of Education for supporting our work. We look forward to connecting with you all again soon.